us tonight. I'm excited to come to you live from Centro on the campus of Bellarmine University in Louisville, Kentucky. My name is Keisha Swan. I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Regional and Affinity Engagement. Part of my role at Bellarmine is to engage non-Louisville alumni across the nation. We at Bellarmine are happy to see you come together as a community tonight. It's my pleasure to welcome alumni representing 25 states from across the nation. Due to COVID-19, I have not had a chance to meet you all in person, but rest assured more opportunities like this are on the way. Again, welcome, and I think I'll take this time to turn it over to Assistant VP of Alumni Relations, Peter Kramer.
Thanks, Keisha. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you could join us tonight on the call. As Keisha said, we are coming to you live from Bellarmine's beautiful campus and the new Centro atrium. It's nice to be back on campus. We've been working from home and we've missed the energy of being on campus. So it's great to be here. But don't worry, as we've been setting up and getting ready for the event, we've been wearing our masks and appropriately socially distancing. So we've been very safe. These are challenging and historic times in our country right now. And, with the pandemic and with the calls for racial equality, and Bellarmine is committed to addressing both of these topics. There's a thorough, thoughtful plan to bring us back to campus in the fall safely for our students, our faculty, and our staff. And we have continued campus dialogue and real action on the social justice issues ongoing. It's important in difficult times like these for communities to come together. So it's great tonight we can bring our Bellarmine community together to just really enjoy ourselves, have some fun, and enjoy the evening. So it's great to see so many alumni, as Keisha said, from across the country. We have over 500 alumni, faculty, staff, Bellarmine parents joining us tonight on this call. So it's a great Bellarmine community gathering. And we just want to offer a welcome to all of you.
We are excited to be joined by two very special guests tonight. Fred No is a member of the Bellarmine class of 1982 and master distiller for Jim Beam. He is a seventh-generation distiller, keeper of the family flame that has burned for more than 200 years. Fred was born in Bardstown, Kentucky, and grew up in the same house his great-grandfather, Jim Beam, once lived. We also have Carla Carlton. Carla is Bellarmine's Director of Executive and Advancement Communication. She's also the Executive Editor of the Bellarmine Magazine. But she is also managing editor of Bourbon Plus, a nationally quarterly magazine, and her book, Barrel Strength Bourbon, The Explosive Growth of America's Whiskey, was released in 2017. Thank you to Fred and Carla for being our special guests.
Yeah, we're so excited to have Fred and Carla both here to lead us through the evening. So we're going to get things started, but just a couple reminders. Cocktail number 2 is going to be a Bellarmine-themed bourbon drink. Carla's going to lead us through that. And so if you haven't voted on the poll yet, we have a poll up. Man, you all submitted awesome names. We had tons of submissions, very unique and creative, and it was really hard to narrow it down to just 5 finalists, but we do have 5 finalists there, and the winning name, the person who submitted it's going to win a bottle of Knob Creek signed by Fred No, so make sure to vote on that poll. I want to thank our production team of Zach Stefanski, Brendan Sullivan, and Kristen Earls, and on behalf of Keisha and myself and our entire alumni team, our longtime director, Stephanie Piper Riley, and another great new assistant director that we have on board now, Bethany Paget. We just want to welcome you all tonight, and let's have some fun. Fred, you want to take it away?
Absolutely, Peter. Well, it's a pleasure for me to be back here at Bellarmine. It's been a while. I pulled in the same way I used to come in when I was going to school here. It brought back some great memories, back in the 80s when I spent a lot of time here on campus. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about making some cocktails, but before we get started, I kind of think we'll give you the ABCs of bourbon, or kind of the rules of bourbon. I've traveled the world promoting our brands, and it's amazing how many people think they know a lot about bourbon, but when they start reciting what they think bourbon is, there's a lot of misconceptions. So I kind of like to get the rules out there so you know when you're going to get a bourbon what it goes into. Number 1, bourbon's got to be made in the United States. You know, a lot of people think bourbon's got to be made here in Kentucky. I think all the good bourbon is made here in Kentucky. 95% of the world's bourbon is made right here in the state of Kentucky. But anywhere in the continental United States or a United States holding, you can make bourbon. By law, corn has to be the majority grain in the mash bill or recipe for bourbon. You know, at Beam, we use corn, rye, and malted barley. Now we're playing with some other grains, but if you're going to call your product bourbon, it must be at least 51% corn into the mash that you're doing. Also, when we distill the bourbon, it cannot be higher than 160 proof when it comes off the still. When you go and put it into the barrel, it cannot be higher than 125 proof. When you go to put it into the bottle to be sold, it cannot be lower than 80 proof. That takes care of the strength on it. Now, you know, by law, we cannot add any colors or flavors to bourbon. You know, the color of this bourbon you see here all came from the white oak barrels that we aged the bourbon in. We use charred American white oak barrels. And what happens during the aging, I'll kind of explain it a little bit. When we distill the whiskey, when it comes off the still, it's crystal clear. We call it white dog. I asked my dad when I was a little boy, why do you call that stuff white dog? He said, look at it, boy. It's clear, it's white. If you drink enough of this stuff, it will bite you like a dog. It will bite you like a dog if you drink enough. But the next morning when you wake up, you know you're still alive because you can feel your heartbeat right in the temples of your head. But we put this white dog in the barrels and put it away to be aged here in Kentucky. You know, we let nature take over. The hot summers here in Kentucky, the liquid expands inside of that barrel, passing through the caramelized layer of sugar that was set up when that barrel was charred at the cooperage. There's a caramelized layer we call the red line. As that liquid passes through that caramelized layer, it picks up color. In the winter, when it gets cold, the liquid contracts and it comes out. During the aging, this inward and outward moving of that liquid is how we pick up 100% of the color in the bourbon and probably 60 to 70% of the flavor. You know, that's what, you know, makes the bourbon, in my opinion, the aging in those charred white oak barrels. You know, that's where we're picking up. You got to be patient. You know, we don't make bourbon today and sell it tomorrow. What we make today, for example, this Jim Beam White, it's 4 years from now, it will go into the bottle. A bottle of Knob Creek, it's 9 years from now. So it's kind of a long process. My dad always said, you got to be patient because it takes a long time to make bourbon. You know, that's the thing about it. If you're going to call your bourbon Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, it must be aged here in the state of Kentucky for at least 2 years. So, you know, that's kind of the laws of bourbon. You know, that's what we all have to follow those rules if you're going to put bourbon on the label. Any deviation, your product falls back into the whiskey category. I've got an old saying that I heard my dad say years ago. He said, all bourbon is whiskey, but all whiskey ain't bourbon. And you think about it, you know, we are a type of whiskey. And there's Scotch whiskey, Canadian whiskey, blended whiskeys, but bourbon whiskey has a set of rules. And it's being made all over the United States now. There's little craft distilleries that have popped up probably in all 50 states by now. But, you know, bourbon is really, I think, from Kentucky and all about Kentucky. It's part of our heritage here. You know, our family's been making bourbon since 1795. You know, I was lucky enough to be the 7th generation of Beam family members to be involved in this business. You know, and the question comes up, well, if your last name is No, how are you Jim Beam's great-grandson? Well, my grandmother was Jim Beam's daughter, and she married a No. That's why the last name went from Beam to No. So that's kind of all the questions. Now we need to think about, you know, one thing I always tell people, if you taste a bourbon and make a face, it's too strong. Cut it down to where it's pleasing to your palate. Because a lot of times people's first experience with bourbon is not a pleasant one. Somebody hands them a shot, maybe at a tailgate at a college football game, and they just throw their head back because they see somebody else do it, or you see the Cowboys on TV. That's not the way you want to introduce yourself. Get it down to where it's pleasing to your palate. Add a little water to it. We're going to make some cocktails tonight that are very refreshing and very easy to make. You know, that's the thing about bourbon. It's so versatile. Sure, you can drink it neat right out of the bottle on a cube of ice with a little water. But tonight we're going to make us some cocktails. And one of them that I'm going to make is something that has become very popular in Japan, and something that we're working on here in the United States quite a bit is the highball. You know, and I can remember growing up in Bardstown, a lot of people drank highballs, you know, which is a simple bourbon with an added maybe soda water, ginger ale, even a Coca-Cola. I mean, that was just something that you saw. But we're going to take this a little different and do what we call a Jim Beam citrus highball. And it's very light, very refreshing. You know, it's summertime. Here we are in June. And, you know, people kind of shy away from bourbon because, you know, that's what you think about in the wintertime. But I'm going to show you a drink here that, you know, you can do this and drink it outside by the pool, drink it with dinner because it's light, easy to drink. I'll start by filling my glass with ice. And you're really going to see how simple this is. You take a lemon wedge, or you can do it with any citrus. I'm using lemon tonight. You could do it with lime or orange or any kind of a citrus fruit. Squeeze it into the ice. Take you a little bit of your Jim Beam. Not a lot, just a little bit. Because that's the thing about the citrus highball. You want it light and effervescent. You know, you can use any good club soda. It's got a lot of bubbles. Top it off. Take the mixing spoon and just mix it one time. Don't stir it, because if you stir it up, you'll lose a lot of your effervescence from the drink. You know, you want to make sure you got the bubbles. And that's the citrus highball, a nice, refreshing drink. It's actually a great alternative to beer. I'm sure our friends in the beer industry don't want to hear me say that, but, you know, we're in bourbon country tonight. So that's my Jim Beam Citrus Highball. This drink has become very popular in Japan, and we've actually developed a machine that they can dispense it almost just like a draft beer. It has the bourbon, the soda already mixed, and they serve it in beer mugs. And it's become a very, very popular drink in Japan. So here's to you. I did pretty good. I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Carla, and she's going to teach you how to do the Bellarmine drink.
Well, welcome, everybody. As we said, we're really glad that everybody's joined us here tonight virtually. As Peter mentioned and Keisha mentioned, I am editor of Bellarmine Magazine, and I hope that most, if not all of you, are receiving that and reading that. When I'm not writing about Bellarmine, I'm usually writing about bourbon. And I'm going to put in a little plug for my book here, Barrel Strength Bourbon. It's available locally at Carmichael's, at Costco. Makes a great gift. Father's Day is coming up. If you'd like to have a signed copy, you can go to my website, thebourbonbabe.com, and I'll be happy to sign a copy and send that to you. One of the things that I mentioned, mainly the main thing in the book, is I'm looking at the explosive growth of the bourbon industry over the past decade, especially here in Kentucky. And one of the things that has contributed to that is the resurgence of cocktail culture, as Fred was mentioning, especially classic cocktails, classic bourbon cocktails. So tonight I'm going to show you how to make a version of a classic cocktail called the whiskey sour. Now, the typical whiskey sour is whiskey, lemon juice, and sugar or simple syrup. You just shake that up and strain it into your glass. Some people add an egg white, which may sound a little weird. It doesn't taste like egg. It gives it a nice frothy finish. But tonight we're going to make something that includes fruit. Fred was mentioning that his highball is very light and refreshing, and you could drink several of these by the pool. I will caution you that this drink, while it's also light and refreshing, each of these two drinks I'm going to be making contains 3 ounces of Knob Creek, which is 100 proof. So It's deceptively refreshing. So I would encourage you this summer, if we ever get to gather together in person and you're making these for some of your friends, that you make sure they use a ride-sharing service when they leave or they stay overnight, because the best way to enjoy Kentucky bourbon is responsibly. So I just wanted to say that. So we're going to be shaking this drink tonight. There are two kinds of shakers, so I brought both of these to show you. This, probably most people have one of these in their house. This is a 3-piece or cobbler shaker, and it's because it's made of 3 pieces. It's got your basic cup where you put your ingredients, your lid, which has a strainer built into it, and then the cap that you put on while you're shaking. I am not going to be using this tonight for 2 reasons. One, it's really ideal for making 1 drink, and I'm going to be making 2. The other reason is that if I had a show on the Food Network, it would probably be called The Messy Bartender, because I tend to sling my drinks everywhere when I'm mixing them, and we would end up with stuff on the ceiling of Centro, so we're not going to use that tonight. Instead, we're going to be using what's called a Boston shaker. And we're going to fill up this glass and then pop this guy on the top and shake it. The other reason this is great is that you'll be able to see as we build the drink. So without further ado, I love that sound of the popping there. What we're going to do is we're going to start. Oh, this is just in. Peter, we have an envelope here. What is this drink called, you might ask? Well, our poll results are in. And as Peter mentioned, we had some awesome names for this drink, and I'm kind of jealous that I didn't think of some of these myself. All right, so we were able to narrow this down to 5 submissions, and we did want to give a shout out to the people who submitted the Scarlet Night and the Scarlet Nightcap, because there were many submissions for those. So great job, but we couldn't split the bottle of Knob Creek 30 or 40 ways. So we narrowed it down to 5 other names. So we want to go ahead and congratulate the Merton Spirit, which, you know, it's so obvious. I don't know why I didn't think of that. That was submitted by Addie Asta, class of 2020. I'm not sure how I would pronounce this. The Bourbon Smash, B-U Urban Smash, Bourbon Smash, submitted by Amy Morgan Haberman, class of 2003. The Night Nectar, submitted by Scott Ironside, class of 1996, and Harold Davis, class of 1983. In the Love of Proof, submitted by Annie Nell Wadey, class of 2017. Of course, that's a play on our motto, In the Love of Truth. And finally, The Velvet Valor, submitted by Jacob Brown, class of 2019 and 2020. All of those were excellent, amazing submissions, so thank you all for that. But after the votes were tallied, the winner of our Bellarmine themed drink poll and the winner of the signed bottle of Knob Creek is the Night Nectar. So congratulations to Scott Ironside and Harold Davis. You will both receive, 2 of you, each of you will, we won't make you arm wrestle or anything, you will both receive a signed bottle of Knob Creek from Fred No. So now, how do you make a Night Nectar? I'm glad you asked. All right, we're gonna make 2 so we can split between you 2 guys. We're gonna start with 6 ounces of Knob Creek. So you wanna build this with your liquor first. See, I'm already spilling it. We'll lick it up later. Okay, so there's that. Then you wanna add 4 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. And it's important. This is amazing. This is our special events team. I want to give them a shout out too, because when I'm at home, I just have a lemon that I'm kind of squeezing and picking lemon seeds out. But this is like being on, you know, the Food Network here. So we're going to do 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. And you do want to do fresh lemon juice. You don't want to use that little lemon that's in your refrigerator door, because fresh ingredients are really just going to make all the difference in having a great cocktail. So there's 4. Then we're going to do 4 teaspoons of blackberry preserves, and you want to get seedless preserves because we're going to be straining this and that'll just make it easier to do. So there's 1, and this is what's replacing the simple syrup, and it's going to give it some color if it will come off the spoon. Okay, there we go. All right, and then finally we're going to add 2 teaspoons of powdered sugar, which is also going to just kind of offset that lemon and make it a little bit sweeter. And it's just kind of interesting to put in there. So, all right. So those are our wet ingredients. And now we're going We're going to fill up this glass the rest of the way with ice. And you want to get that pretty much to the top of your glass so you can get it nice and chilled. All right. Okay, so now we're going to pop this guy on there. You want to do it, if you're using one of these, you go to kind of an angle and there'll be a straight edge here, and you want to shake it away from people so that in case it does come apart, you don't sling it all over them. And whichever shaker you're using, you're going to want to just shake it until there's kind of a frost, little light frost on the outside of your shaker so that you know it's good and frosty. All right, that's probably good enough. I'm going to dump it back in here, and here's the part where we're going to see if this comes apart. And it doesn't. This is the, oh, come on. You have to hit it on the opposite side. It will come apart. Maybe. There we go. I knew it would. Okay. Never any doubt. We're going to set that aside. And now we're going to take, this is called a Hawthorne Strainer. It's got a little spring, and you're going to put that in there. We have 2 glasses, so I'm going to show you. With one of these, we're going to do crushed ice. But another option for the summer is a large ice cube. So I made up some of these ice cubes at home and brought them. A large round or square ice cube. This is going to be good in the summer because it's going to take longer to melt. And what's great about that is that it won't dilute your drink. So if you're just sipping along during the summer, you're going to have, you know, your drink is not going to lose its intensity. All right, so we did that. And now we're going to strain these in here. There's one. There's almost 2. That's pretty good. All right, there's the other one. And then we're just going to garnish those with a fresh blackberry and a lemon peel. And this is your night nectar. Cheers. And now I'm going to send it back over to Fred when he's going to make our last cocktail of the evening.
Looks good. Look, you did a good job over there. You worked a lot harder than I did, Carla. That's good. That's good. The next drink that I'm going to make, I'll tell a couple stories here before we, you know, we have several products at Beam. And I use the Jim Beam White on the Highball. We got our Jim Beam Black, which is extra aged. And when we say extra aged, it's aged to a 6-year taste profile. This is a 4-year taste profile. It's aged 4 years. This was mingling of barrels that are older than 6, right at 6, and a little bit younger. The thing about this one is 86 proof, a little more strength, a little more flavor, you know, so it works well in cocktails or neat or however you want to do it. You know, we at Beam, we have several. I know they said we were going to give away a couple bottles of Knob Creek. You know, those are our super premium bourbons. You know, we have a wide array of products to fit different taste profiles. You know, that's the thing about bourbon. If everybody liked the same one, there'd be one bottle of bourbon on the shelf. I'm sure all of you have been in liquor stores and you see there's many, many, many bottles of bourbon. You got to find the one that suits your taste. You know, the old Jim Beam Black is a good one that I always tell the story. It's one of our family favorites, and it kind of goes back to my childhood. You know, I was a knucklehead growing up, and it was funny back. My dad, I went off to military academy. Back in the 70s, a lot of knucklehead boys were threatened with military school. You know, if you don't straighten up, we're going to send you to military school. My father, he wasn't real big on threats. They sent me to military school. And so I was in military school about 150 miles south of here to Castle Heights down in Lebanon, Tennessee. And you'd come home for Christmas and, you know, holidays, Thanksgiving and stuff. And while I was home my senior year, my father, he accused me of watering down his whiskey. And I'm sure somebody who is on this Zoom call tonight has drank some of their parents' liquid out of their liquor cabinet and probably refilled the bottle with water. I did not do this. I was innocent. I didn't, but, you know, I was the only child at our house. So my father confronted me, and I said, Dad, I didn't do it. He said, you don't have to lie, son. He said, you know, there's your mother. I talked to her. She didn't do it. I didn't do it. And the cat, I don't think the cat can get up into the cabinet. You're the only person left. So I took my lump, so I didn't do it. Well, at military school, every week you had to write a letter home and submit it to keep from getting demerits. That was how they disciplined us. If you didn't make your bed, they give you 2 demerits. If you didn't shave. Anyway, so turn in your letter. And a lot of times my favorite letter home was no mun, no fun, your son. And my dad, you know, being just like me, he would send one back, too bad, so sad, your dad, you know, no money in the envelope. Well, after I got accused of this hideous crime of watering down the master distiller's bourbon at home, I acquired a few demerits. I'll just leave it at that. And I had to stay at school because if your total of demerits were over 10, you could not go home for the weekend. So I had to stay a few weeks in a row without coming home. Well, while I was still banned to the campus and couldn't go home, the liquor got watered down again. I was 150 miles south of Bardstown, so there was no way I could have watered down my father's liquor. He discovered that the cleaning lady was the one who watered down the whiskey. So it was actually Beam's Black Label. So I get a letter from my father, you know, and a $20 bill fell out, and he apologized. Sorry, he figured out that Edna, the cleaning lady, watered down the whiskey since I wasn't home. And so later on in life, you know, you get a little older and you can talk to your parents about certain things, and you kind of come clean on. So, you remember when you accused me of watering down the bourbon? He said, yeah. He said, I apologized. I believe I sent you a little piece of money for it. He said, oh, yeah. I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. He said, well, what's that? I said, I didn't mess with the bottles up close to the cabinet. I went to the back and would take the full bottles and put them in my suitcase and take them back to school, because it's amazing what a bottle of bourbon at a military academy, you become very popular. And Jim Beam Black Label was what I was taking back for our senior year to get away. And back in those days, you know, the drinking age was 18, so we were of age. Now it's 21, but it was kind of funny. You know, you look back on things changed. Back in the 70s, if you were 18, you could legally buy liquor. So that's the story I always tell when I talk about Jim Beam Black. It's been one of my favorites pretty much all of my life, and we make whiskey ciders like Carla did with Jim Beam Black at the house. My son, Freddie, likes to mix them up, and he uses a lot of black. But the drink that I'm going to do now is one that's gaining a lot of popularity, and it's a mule. You know, and I know it's gone by several names. If you put vodka in it, it's a Moscow mule. We particularly like Kentucky mules because we drink bourbon here, not much vodka in our house. I don't think there's any, really. But it's a simple drink, easy to make, and you can do it. It's very refreshing if it's the hot time of the year. It consists of bourbon, ice, ginger beer, and a little lime. So they kind of traditionally put it in a metal cup. I'm getting like you, Carla. I'm making a mess. So we put, you think, between the two of us, the messiest bartenders in the state, put a little bourbon in here, a little black. And that's another thing. You can kind of make the drink to your own strength. If you like it a little stronger, you can always add a little more bourbon. You're better off to start a little lighter and work your way up. Because if you go too heavy, then you can't really just add another little shot. But get your lime, which I'm kind of a big fan of limes. Squeeze that in there to get the lime juice. As Paula said, natural ingredients are the best way to go. I mean, that's what makes the drink. And then your ginger beer. Which in this drink also is very good with rye whiskey. If you're a fan of rye whiskey and you want to make a mule, you can use the rye as opposed to bourbon. And then again, just kind of give it just a little stir, not much, because you want to keep the bubbles, so you want it to be effervescent. Boy, Pretty good. That was something when I just did my lips there. That's something that my father, when he tasted bourbon, he had a unique way of tasting bourbon. He put it in his mouth and he rolled it all around and he would chew on it. And a whiskey writer one time coined the term the Kentucky chew on the way Booker, tasted his bourbon. So now when I get out there on the road, people who met my father, he's been dead a good while now, but is he going to do the Kentucky chew? So if I hadn't done the Kentucky chew, I'm sure somebody out there would have submitted an email and said, wait a minute, Fred didn't just drink bourbon. It must have been something else. If he didn't do the Kentucky chew, something's wrong. But that's the way that Dad always tasted and the way I like to taste. Just kind of pull it in there and work it all around because, different parts of your mouth pick up different flavors. So if you can roll the bourbon around in that mouth, sweet, sour, get it all. You want to get a nice breath and assess the finish. Bourbon is an experience. You should enjoy it. You do it with your family and friends. I mean, that's the thing. It brings people together. Maybe that's something we need to think about doing to bring everybody together. Let's get together, have a little drink, talk things out, work out some of the problems that's going on right now. But I really enjoyed hanging out tonight. I'm glad Peter thought to invite me down, and hopefully maybe we get a question or two. Who knows?
Fred, we do have a couple questions. Some people were asking about the family tree and your relation to Booker No. So
Right.
Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about the Beam family?
Well, Booker was my father. He was Frederick Booker No Jr. I'm Frederick Booker No the third. My son is Frederick Booker No the fourth. And his 1.5-year-old son is Frederick Booker No the fifth. I go by Fred. Freddie goes by Freddie. Booker went by Booker, and now we have Little Booker, who is, we call it, Freddie's got a product called Little Book. So we actually do have, and he created that name from the name that Dad used to call him when he was a baby. When we handed him to him, Little Book. And so he named his first product Little Book. And now we do have a Little Book who runs around and grabs me by the finger and leads me around. As soon as that little guy figures out, Papa, I want, we're going to be in business for sure. But yeah, the family tree, it goes back to Jacob Beam, and then his son David Beam carried the business on, moved it to Bardstown, and actually started over on Hardin Creek, which is where Washington, Marion, and Nelson County meet. They moved it to Bardstown to get closer to the railroad that was coming through in the 1800s. The distillery ran there until Prohibition. And then David's son, David M., came along, took it over. David M.'s son, James Beauregard Beam, or Jim Beam, he was the fourth generation. He took it over, but then the dreaded Prohibition came about. And Jim Beam shut the distillery down and got out of the business. He didn't want to go to jail. That was the story that his daughter told me, that Aunt Mimi, and he just got totally away from it. He sold his farm and threw in the distillery just to get away. Then after Prohibition was repealed, Jim Beam, at the age of 70, came back and started the Murphy Barber Distillery again in Bullitt County, where we're located now in Claremont. He got that done in 120 days at the age of 70. He had the help of his son, T. Jeremiah, his nephew, Carl, and his brother, Park, and they got it back up and running in 120 days. Heck, I'm 63, and if I can get the grass cut at my house, I'm doing good. I can't imagine starting a distillery at 70 years old. But I'm always glad he did, because Lord knows what my family would have continued to do. And then T. Jeremiah had no children. So when he looked to bring another family member into the business, he brought my father, Booker, which was his nephew, into the business. And Dad, as they say, the rest is history. Booker worked there creating the small batch bourbon collection. He did the Booker's bourbon. And really between him, I say, and Jimmy Russell at Wild Turkey, Elmer T. Lee at Blanton's, and Parker Beam at Heaven Hill, I think they rekindled the fire under the bourbon category. They created these super premium bourbons, and they went out on the road and started promoting them, meeting people, telling the stories of bourbon, letting people meet these characters from Kentucky in their natural state, full of stories, and people would say a lot of stuff full of a lot of other stuff that begins with S, but we're not going to go there. I told Peter I'd keep it clean tonight. You guys that know me, you know what I'm talking about. But that's, I think all of us in the bourbon industry, we are storytellers. We love telling stories. I mean, when the story is the history of your family, it's an easy story to tell for me. And most of the guys that are in it, they've all got history. Every bourbon's pretty much got history.
That's great, Fred. There was a couple questions about kind of the flavor inspirations and also, or just kind of the flavors between the different brands that you all have, be it Booker's or Knob Creek or Jim Beam.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of get into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Jim Beam is a very versatile bourbon. It's 4 years in the barrel. This is one that most people cut their teeth on or learn to drink or appreciate bourbon with. It's like a +1, Beam and Coke. If you get out in California, they call it a Slim Jim, Jim Beam and Diet Coke. That's kind of the way it is. Very versatile, easy to drink. People can do shots of it. But then when you get into the older bourbons, like, the Jim Beam Black, it's got more age, a little higher strength. It's got a little more taste profile, a little more of the oak comes through from the barrel. The barrel is what gives it the flavor. And as we talked about Knob Creek, it stays in that barrel 9 years and gets bottled at 100 proof. That bourbon is one of the small batch collection of the super premium line. Folks who are wanting to make, drinks like the Manhattan, the old fashioned, they like these bourbon forward cocktails. They like to start with a higher strength bourbon. So when you get the dilution that Carla had when she shook the drink, that ice is melting in that shaker. After the dilution, you still want to be able to taste the bourbon. So you start with a higher proof, maybe use a little less, but it brings more flavor forward. You mentioned the Bookers. Dad released that in 1987 as Christmas gifts to our distributor partners. And he wanted to get back to the way bourbon was 150 years ago. Back in those days, people brought their containers to our distillery and all the other distilleries and bought the bourbon straight from the distiller. You might have brought your jar, your bucket, whatever you wanted to put your bourbon in, and they would draw the bourbon right out of the barrel, fill up your container, and charge 50 cents a quart. That was back before packaging and, excise taxes and all the other people got involved. And you just went straight to the source. And Dad had heard his grandfather, Jim Beam, talk about people coming to the courthouse, and that's where they would take you to get this liquid. And so he said, why don't we do this bourbon straight from the barrel, just like it was back in the old days? As he would say, this is the way bourbon used to be, the way it was meant to be. And Booker's, it's meant to be drank the way you want to do it. We add water to all these lower strength bourbons to bring them down to the bottling strength. Everybody in the industry does. Dad's theory on Booker's is to allow you, the consumer, to cut it to the strength that you want to drink it. If you've had an extremely bad day, you may want to take a drink right out of the bottle. That's not going to make the day get better, but it might make you forget about your problems a little bit. Absolutely. I've got a friend that says if you're going to drink Booker's bourbon at barrel strength, be close to your bed and in your pajamas, because it is, it's 125 proof. And the thing about Booker's, when we distill it, we distill it to the minimum. So there's no water added. Anything distilled at over 125 proof must be cut to 125 proof before it goes into the barrel with water. So Dad didn't want any water added to his product at any time. So we don't add any water before it goes into the barrel. And when I select the barrels, it goes straight from that barrel right to these bottles. So you're getting it in its pure strength. Nothing's added. If you'll see the strength changes, it may be 125.6 this time. It may be 129.8 next time. And we've actually started naming the batches now so people can tell them apart. And it gets kind of fun. Our latest batch on the market is Granny's batch, and it's actually named from our grandmother, Jim Beam's daughter, who actually was the one who carried the family tradition on by having children, which was kind of cool.
Well, thanks so much, Fred, and thank you so much, Carla. You all have been great hosts tonight and great special guests. We really appreciate you all being here, and we appreciate all of you joining us tonight. It's great to bring the Bellarmine community together for a fun evening, and I really enjoyed hearing from Carla and Fred tonight, and we hope you did too. If you joined late, we're going to be, we recorded this event, and we're going to be sending out an email tomorrow with a link to the video. So you can watch it later. If you missed cocktail number 1 or joined a little bit late, you can watch it on your own time. You could also forward it to a friend and have a cocktail evening this weekend and enjoy that. We so much appreciate all of you remaining active, supportive members of our Bellarmine community. You know, the need from our students is greater than ever, especially with the COVID pandemic and the economic downturn. And many would argue that the need for a Bellarmine education is greater than ever. A Bellarmine education that emphasizes a faith-based moral approach with values and emphasizing the intrinsic dignity of each person. So we appreciate everything that you all do to help us accomplish our mission here at Bellarmine, and that's to change lives through education. Our students are wonderful. We get to be around them every day. We're sincerely hoping we get to be around them again very soon in the fall in a very safe way. So we appreciate everything that you all have done for us. And hear us say that you're always a valuable member of the Bellarmine community. You always have a home here at Bellarmine, and we hope you truly believe that, because we truly believe it. So we normally end with a swords up or a go nights of some sort. So hopefully you can end with a bourbons up and enjoy your evening. Again, thanks to Fred and Carla, our production team here, and have a wonderful evening. And please let us know if you ever need anything. Thanks so much.